Faces and humans that are not on a screen. So it's really nice to be here. I'm glad you guys have come out. Today we have three legislators, myself, Chris Conley. This is my district, that's why I'm kind of starting. And then Anthony Nolan came across the bridge tonight. And we're just gonna go through some of the bills that obviously if you guys have been watching the news, and a lot of people watch more news than normal and kept track of a lot of the bills we were doing, because I felt like I got a lot more communication from constituents about certain bills that they were excited about or not happy about. And I'm sure those are other reasons that people are here tonight to talk about them. But we're going to pick a few, I think, to talk about that we're proud of, or the ones that we worked on, and not go over this whole list and go bill by bill, because we want to leave time for you folks here tonight to ask us questions, to see, you know, if there's anything that we could be doing for you better. One of the big bills that I know Chris is going to talk about came up from a meeting with a constituent from an email. And it's a bill that we're really proud to talk about tonight, and I'm sure she'll be talking about it. So if there's something in your head, an idea you have, or something that you don't like, make sure tonight you air that, and we'll see what we can do to help you out. But I think Christine Conley, starting in the center.
Okay.
If you'd like to go with the bill you were excited about, or.
Yeah, I'll get started. So we, our great staff, who we have not seen in person. This is the first time we've seen Emily and Laura in person since COVID. Helps prepare the major public acts. If folks didn't grab it on your way in, please pick it up. It's a really good summary. The front page is our faces and our phone numbers and our emails, but the rest of the document was prepared by our nonpartisan staff, which talks about the major bills that passed the House and the Senate this year, and it's completely unbiased. It's not Democrat, it's not Republican, it's just a summary of our major public acts. So please pick it up. We also have email signups. If you're not on our email list, you don't have to, but we'd appreciate if you'd like to hear from us. And then we have little cards that have our phone numbers and our emails so folks can get a hold of us. And I'm sure our friend Terri will grab those and put the contact information on the stream so that it gets streamed for folks watching at home later.
I do want to say though, if you don't want to be on television, this is actually not live, but we are going to have a mic go around later on for folks that want to ask questions. So when it does get aired, folks know what the question was if we're answering it. But if you, and I don't know if you plan on swinging around, you might just keep it on us. If there's someone that doesn't want to be on TV, just raise your hand and let us know, because you could possibly end up on. And we want to thank you for coming out and filming this. It's a great community service. So
first time in months.
Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. And if you don't want your voice on TV, if you don't have your neighbor wants to tell your questions, if you quietly want to tell it to one of us, we'd be happy to announce it and keep your identity or your voice or however you feel off the TV. So I have a few bills I want to talk about. The first one is our elections bills. We did some great elections work this year. So in 2022, everyone who votes will get to vote on if they want to have early voting or come in, which means that you would go to your voting location. We'd make up the law, we'd make up the specifics, but there'd be at least one per town voting location that you could vote on. This would not be absentee voting. This would be you showing up, you presenting your identification required for voting in the state of Connecticut, and filling out a ballot on a day prior to election day. So everyone will get to vote on that in November 2022. If you wish to do that, vote yes. If you don't wish to do it, vote no. Majority rules on the state for that question on the ballot. We also, the House passed no excuse absentee voting at 50%, or just above 50%. The Senate did pass it at 2/3. So what that means is in 2022, we, as everyone, does not get to vote on whether or not you want to do no excuse absentee ballot. The General Assembly has to come back, re-vote that, because that's our Constitution, for that to get on the ballot. The earliest it can get on the ballot is, it can get on the ballot for 2022 if 2/3 of the House and Senate votes yes. That didn't happen last year. It could happen next year, and we could all vote for that in 2022. Or 51% of the House and Senate voting on it on 2023, your elected officials at that point, then it would be on the ballot 2024. So again, we definitely are all voting on early voting. That would be going to your location by the town early, presenting your proper ID as required by state of Connecticut law, and voting. We all get to vote on that in November 2022. What we did do additionally is we changed our statutes. So our absentee balloting is as broad as it is allowed under our Constitution. What we found is that our statutes were actually more narrow than our Constitution. So while our state constitution has reasons why you can request an absentee ballot, our statute was actually narrower, or our laws in Connecticut were more narrow than our Constitution. So we made our laws in Connecticut follow our state constitution. What we also did in voting is those white boxes are going to stay. So you will be able to, that passed in the budget, you will be able to drop off your absentee ballot in those white boxes for your municipal elections and for future state elections. People really liked that. There were no issues with theft across the state of Connecticut with the white boxes, and people found it was convenient to drop off their absentee ballots at their own time. So we heard people say they like it, we've continued it. That's our elections. We also worked a lot on Port Authority accountability. We know there's been some troubles in the Port Authority, to say it lightly. So we did pass, Anthony and I and Joe worked together to get some accountability laws. That means that contracts continue to have to be reviewed by the state of Connecticut, by OPM, and by DAS. For folks who aren't used to the state of Connecticut lingo, OPM is the Office of Policy Management. Those do the big contracts, they do our budget, they do all of our large contracts. So it makes sure that there are extra eyes and ears on people who do contracts on the Port Authority contracts for several more years. And DAS, they are used to building things, they build the schools, they're used to multi-million-dollar building projects. So they're used to permits, they're used to buildings, they're used to all this stuff. So we, as a contingency, I think I can speak for all of us, do not feel comfortable with the Port Authority being able to do this work on their own without more eyes from the state of Connecticut. So they have to follow that. We did fund more for the Contracting Standards Board. Unfortunately, the governor did take that out, line item out of the budget. So we will continue next year to put another bill to fund the contracting standing boards at a higher rate. Right now, the governor is only allowing one full-time position on that board. Everyone else is part-time or volunteers. So they do need more people, which means more funding. And again, it was in the budget we all voted for, the governor took it out, so we will continue with that to add that. I'm sure when February, one of our first bills we put in is to increase the funding for that. The money is sitting there. Great bill that we've all been working on for years, it's been a project for 10 years before we even started, was the online gaming bill. That finally made it over the finish line this year. It was a bill that Joe and I walked out one night of anger with Chris Soto our first year when that went south.
Yep.
Came back though after we cooled down. And Anthony has been along with the ride, but the paperwork, when we do anything with the tribes, the compact gets changed. That then gets approved by the federal government. So we have done our work in the state of Connecticut to allow online gaming. That is sitting with the federal government because the tribes are federally licensed, federally recognized tribes. So we expect that paperwork to be approved in the early fall. So hopefully by football season, everyone who wishes to can gamble or can bet online. Anyone who doesn't wish to doesn't need to. Each tribe has contracted with one of the companies, the two major companies, each tribe picked one, that do your online gaming already, which was all completely unregulated and untaxed. So there will be sporting bars at each tribe if one wants to go in person to watch a game and maybe place a bet, or maybe not, maybe just enjoy a game. Those will be in each tribe, and each tribe will have their own app for your phone. The apps are the same that has been working in Rhode Island, New York, New Jersey, everyone around us. You do have to be located in the state of Connecticut to use the app. And your phones have location services, so that part is actually not very hard to do. So if you'd like to download, feel free to download the app. And then once the federal government approves that paperwork, you'll be able to do it. We're hoping for football season, we'll be ready to go. That was the plan for that. And there's expecting to be a lot of the revenue is going towards addictive gambling. And for folks who are worried about friends or neighbors or themselves who have gambling issues, you can block yourself from the app, just like you can block yourself from gambling at the tribes. Same rules. If you know someone who needs that help, make sure you let them know that's available. There are limits to how much you can gamble each day, and there are limits to credit. So sometimes on some of those apps, if people like to play games on your apps, you have like fake points. You can't really have like thousands of dollars of fake money. It's real money that you're gambling. And there'll be some online lottery too if you wish to purchase your lottery tickets that way. Last one I want to talk about is to highlight the work we've been doing on the trains for southeastern Connecticut. That I think was a great opportunity brought to us as an idea from a constituent. And with President Biden being a fan of trains, and with us actually having money this year in the budget, being able to start the study for more train access in eastern Connecticut was a great opportunity. Things fell into place at the right time. We were able to secure $2.3 million out of the budget to study greater access for trains in eastern Connecticut. And the next step would be buses once we get trains going. A feasibility study is required. A state feasibility study is required to get federal dollars for these projects. So this is a long-term project to get some state feasibility study as to what it would cost to get more trains on our current tracks. We're not proposing any new tracks at all. Our current tracks on Shoreline East to improve and have more train stations in Groton, and then to get trains, passenger trains on the current rail lines that are used every day by others, just not humans, that go from New London and Groton all the way up to Norwich. These rail lines actually connect up to Worcester, and Massachusetts is working on a similar path to start a study to get those Massachusetts tracks. The track line that picks people up right in New London and Groton connects all the way up to Boston. It's currently used for freight, but if we can get people, you can get from New London to Boston by going north through Worcester and give people opportunities. So opportunities for people to get back and forth to work, to travel for fun, and we're really excited to get this going. We've talked to Congressman Courtney, Senator Blumenthal, and Senator Murphy, and they're very excited to take the ball from us and down in DC and get some money and get some more transportation here in eastern Connecticut. It would be great for the environment to get some cars off the road. It would also be helpful for people to get back and forth to work. So I think it's a good project all around. So, Anthony, what else would you like to highlight?
Well, some of my favorite bills. First, I want to just commend Christine on the Port Authority work, being on the committee that she's on. She has a Herculean effort in trying to make sure that New London had some voice with the Port Authority and the trouble that we've been having. And it's just nice to know that the support from these guys, trying to make sure that New London has a voice, a seat at the table now, and also a little bit more in the pilot area that will help New London in regards to pilot funding coming soon. But some of the major bills that I really tried to associate with is one, the Children's Mental Health Bill. And that bill requires requiring the Youth Suicide Advisory Board and the Office of Child Advocate to administer evidence-based youth suicide prevention programs. Allows minors to receive as many outpatient treatments as necessary. Those are some of the big things that some of the families in New London and other areas had talked about and called us on. Mental health being such a major issue, especially what we went through with COVID and some of the possibilities of things that we might be going through in the future because of the separation that a lot of the kids had, not only kids, but some adults that had from either school, jobs, and or just families. Mental health has been a serious thing in our community, and those are some of the things that I looked forward to in this session to try and help correct or support to correct and try and make a difference. And another one was the, I think it's on page, let's see, I'm sorry. Coercive, page 9. Of course, my pages are all over the place.
I got you.
The domestic violence and coercive control, that was a pretty important bill. I think with all the domestic violence issues that are going on in our communities, on page 9, as you can see, the legislature made several changes related to domestic violence, civil restraining orders, establishing a general definition first, and then allowing victims subject to coercive control by family members or household members is a major thing. I think also they created a grant to provide free legal assistance, which is something that a lot of our domestic violence victims, some of the ways they were suffering when it came to domestic violence, they didn't have the funding always to get the support that they needed. And I thought that was a really huge bill because of a lot of the domestic violence calls that I know that I go to on my normal job, besides being a state representative, and just having an interaction with either Safe Futures or any other organization that helps with domestic violence. That was a pretty huge one. I thought that was a necessity to come. And then there was another bill, the baby bonds bill that is now going to be coming into existence, where families will be able to get up to, I think it's $3,200 in regards to babies all the way up until they're 18, which I think the total amount is between 10 and 11,000, if I'm not mistaken, and it just is an important thing to try and help.
So you have 3,200 at birth.
Yep, 3,200 at birth. It's just an important thing, I think, to close the gap with some of that. Some of the things that have been going on in
So the
regards
child
to
gets
economic
$3,200 in their account at birth, the child born in Connecticut, and then that gets invested when they're 18. They can use it for college, trade school, vehicles, homes,
It's
apartments.
something to help them push forward.
Push forward into adulthood.
I thought that was important.
Children.
Children.
All children?
It's children. I'll read this here. The Bond Act establishes the Connecticut Baby.
We're having a little trouble hearing you, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Oh, well, that doesn't work.
Yeah, that might work.
Our church is supposed to be closed.
Oh. So the Bond Act is on page 8, and it talks about the Bond Act establishes the Connecticut Baby Bond Trust, administered by state treasurer, and authorizes up to $600 million in bonds for programs for FY 23 through 34. Must create accountings for babies born after July 1st, 2021, whose births were covered under HUSky designated beneficiaries, and may deposit up to $3,200 into each designated beneficiary's account at birth. And once they reach 18, they get to decide what they want to use the funding for. So it's kind of to lift a lot of people out of poverty and try and help close that economic or financial gap that there is. So they're going to work on that. And I can read 20 other bills.
Yeah.
But Joe, if you want.
Yeah, I got a few bills myself. First, I want to let you guys know that having a team up there is more important than you could imagine. To be able to lean on people that you know don't always think the same way or vote the same way, but in a lot of ways being able to have each other's back. When we walk into a room with 5 or 6 legislators and they're all from the city of Bridgeport, or the 5 from New Haven, to know that you have someone that's going to be just invested as you are. I don't think the casino gaming bill goes through if we're not on the same page. And it took a lot of effort because you remember, if you're getting anything in any part of the state, there's somebody else somewhere that thinks they're not getting what they should be getting. And I think the Bridgeport delegation was really upset early on because they wanted their own casino in Bridgeport. So there was a lot of yelling and walking away and being upset.
A little bit of cursing.
Yeah, but in the end, knowing that we have people that understand the issue, understand the impact that the casino has on this area, again, it's already created some jobs. I'm a construction worker by trade. With DraftKings, we have the job there for Hillary Company. We're a union shop. Our guys have medical benefits. This little ripple is what's happening already. And again, there's some negatives to gambling, everybody knows that. And if you look at the overall New England area, we were the last state to do it. So it was, even if you were against gambling, and we had folks that were vehemently against it because they had issues or they had family members that had issues, we fought for the addiction money. And I thought that was an important part because coming from this area, having this bond with other legislators, understanding that we have family members that went through that. So I think it was important for us to be together. That's all I'll say about the teamwork thing. I rely on it heavily. I know. Hopefully, I'm a little bit of a crush for you guys sometimes.
But it is important. I mean,
It is.
Seeing other districts or areas with numerous people compared to us, and starting to this work like we've worked this year, and in years prior. But I just it was so important for the delegation to come together and let them know that as a group, we're serious about these things, and we're definitely going to stand until we get some of these things in Southeastern Connecticut.
That we're a voice now, as one voice. They got the criminal erasure, and again, there's so many bills that went through here. You guys will watch the news, and they'll in the beginning, 4,000 bills get filed. 5,000 bills, I think it was. I forget what the ending number was.
We were up to 6,000.
Oh, we're up to 6,000 bills. So as a legislator, somebody will come in and they on the Channel 8, they announce that somebody put in a bill that was gonna raise tax on puppies by 2,000%. And we're getting all these emails from people saying, what are you guys doing up there? Are you crazy? Are you nuts? In the end, there's 156 individuals that can put it in any bill that they want. And we don't have to agree with it, but we certainly end up having to answer for it a lot of times. So I just want you to know the actual bills that got passed are in the hundreds, not the thousands. So a lot of the news you see early when we first go into session are bills that, and I'm not saying they're bad bills because somebody brought it for a reason, but it might be a bill you vehemently disagree with, but on a lot of times we probably are, we represent you a lot of times, we're with you on that. So always reach out to us if you're worried about a bill that you heard about, but to know the process that these bills go through and the vetting they go through before they get passed, it's enormous. And it's a lot of legwork and a lot of people putting their input on it. So the criminal erasure, we know where we are in our country with police, with community, how we're balancing this and folks are upset. We did some good bills, and this criminal erasure one, which sounded to a lot of people like we're just letting people off the hook. Once again, I can tell you when I got elected in 2016, my first 5 phone calls were from friends, 1 family member, but 3 really close friends that had suffered, basically a felony on their record from the 90s. Lost a job they had at either EB or Millstone, and were never able to recover it. And they were asking if I can get them help, because maybe I might know the governor now. I worked with them. I wasn't able to get them I wasn't able to get them a pardon. But this bill basically means that you made a mistake in 1997, or right now it goes back 6 years, it lasts for 10 years on your record, and then it goes away. And there's folks out there who will say, well, I don't understand that. You did the crime, you do the time. What we found are life sentences for people. Life sentences in minimum wage jobs, which means that the families suffer, which ultimately ends up meaning that the children of those folks end up in bad situations that we end up paying for. This is a smart approach. A lot of the people, especially with the opiate work and opiate addiction that I'm involved with, helping families and communities, the amount of felonies that have happened to folks that are in drug addiction is incredible. And if we don't start addressing it in a way, a carrot and stick approach. I mean a carrot. How do you say that? Carrot instead of the stick, whatever it is. I don't know. Yeah, that's you guys get it, right? But we're trying to move people forward and let them actually get their feet underneath them. And there were a lot of bills that looked like that. Even the free phone calls from prison. You'll see people get agila and be upset about it, saying, "Why would we give people free phone calls from prison?" And in the end, if you're in prison for 10 years and you don't have the money to speak to your loved ones, because it wasn't charged before when you're doing collect calls, you don't have a plan. You can't talk to mom and dad or your uncle that owns the masonry business and says, listen, you're almost out. Just keep going. When you get out, I have a job for you. Those are the kind of conversations that most inmates have. And we know we'll pick out the one where somebody was doing something wrong or setting up a deal. But in the end, recidivism goes down when we make bills like this. And I was really proud to be part of all that because the people that we know, our family, our friends, they suffer from things like that. So that was, to me, a good one. The broadband internet, if this thing, people say, why did COVID happen? If you say everything's going to happen for a reason, I would think the reason would be to really put a light on what's wrong with our country, our community, the difference between people that have money and don't have money, the folks that didn't have internet at their house. Those children are going to be behind maybe 2 or 3 years in school now because they didn't have immediate access. And a lot of us would say, well, the parents should have had that. Well, we're a community, and if we let these kids slip through the cracks, if we don't provide internet, which again sounds like money that to us, I think an older person, I'm 50, and internet to me, when you think of a child, is, oh, they're just going to play video games all day, they don't really care. We found out that they could not learn from home, but there's also, when regular school happens, what they did, the disadvantages of not having internet, not having a printer. Those are things that most of us in this room probably take for granted. But it's something that I didn't have to deal with as a kid. It was more equal playing ground in 1970 when I was in elementary school. I didn't have internet because no one else did. You had internet, right? But I think what Connecticut has done and what we're trying to do as a legislature is to look at the internet like water, like electricity, a utility, the necessity that it actually is. And, the amount of pride that I feel to be able to work on bills like this, and I know these guys, they do a lot of the legwork. A lot of the fight and the back and forth. We've been in these rooms, but we've also heard all the criticism when a bill comes out like this. Oh, it's just the government throwing more money away at poor people. I can honestly tell you, we are getting results. They're measurable. Kids are having better outcomes. And again, going through COVID to be in the state of Connecticut, if you compared us to other states, when everyone says, well, why do I live here? I would say that's a huge reason. Because we were really stressed about a couple 100,000 kids that didn't have access. There were other states that had millions of kids with no access. So we've been working our way towards this. So that's one of our goals, to continue to work towards that. And when you hear bills like that come through and you hear people in the paper or comments on Facebook just saying we're giving money away, this was vetted. These ideas don't just drop out of the sky onto a table and we vote yes or no on it. They've been vetted. We've talked about them ad nauseum, I can tell you. We talked about bills for 3 hours or 10 hours, deciding if this phone is black or white. And after 10 hours, we all vote on it, but it was a 10-hour discussion. Government moves slow for a reason, and I'm glad to be part of these bills, but I also want to make sure, like we said earlier, we took this first half hour to talk about the bills we want to talk about, but what's important to us is what you guys think. And I know there's some questions out there, so we should probably just jump right into questions, I think.
And Emily's getting up to assist.
She's going to take a mic, so we're trying to get it to record on this. This is, what's the show this will be on?
Potluck Politics.
Potluck Politics.
Channel what?
Channel 12.
Channel 12, and that's in Groton. So if you're not in Groton, you can get popcorn and meet some of your friends that live in Groton and hang out with us.
Is it on YouTube?
Oh, it could be on
It
YouTube
is.
also.
Eventually on YouTube too. Yeah.
All right, so, and again, if you don't want the mic, if you don't want your question to be over the speaker, that's fine. We may repeat this question just so the audience can hear it on TV. Oh, this is Emily.
This is
And-
Emily.
And we owe Emily a round of applause because Emily and Laura helped a lot of people. We walked in tonight and Emily, I was pulled aside by a gentleman that said, Emily saved me, helped me with my unemployment and a few other issues. If I had a dime for every time someone said Emily helped, I'd have just a bunch of dimes. I don't know how much money, but it would be a
We could
bunch.
pay Emily and Lauren better.
Yeah, we could pay you in dimes.
Thank you. If they got paid for each unemployment claim that they resolved, they would have a much better budget. But they were pleased to help us through COVID, to help with all those unemployment claims. When the DOL closed down, it really was your state representatives and state senators' offices who was the only source to get to the Department of Labor to fix people's unemployment claims. They still do it. It's just much less of a volume. So if you do have issues with state agencies, please contact us. We do have ways to help people that you might not have realized.
I'm Patrice Granafos, I'm the mayor of the town of Groton, and I wanted to say for myself first, thank you, three legislators, for working on behalf of all of us here in southeastern Connecticut. In particular, I wanted to talk to you about a certain issue that one of your town people came to the council, the idea for the expanded rail service, and in turn then we turned him over to our delegation and they took the ball and they ran with it. And we thank you so much for listening to us and to being responsive, and we understand it is going to be a long haul, but I agree with Representative Dela Cruz that it is vitally important that we have a team up there. That you three work together on our behalf for all the municipalities in southeastern Connecticut, and you work with Senator Austin as well, who is a big help to all of us. We see her very often at our functions in town. Having said that, we have here in Groton established Groton Resilience and Sustainability Task Force, and they were very much interested in the train proposal, as their chairperson is the one who drafted the proposal. And Mr. Zell-Stever reached to me today and he said, he's out of town, and he asked me if I could read the following to you three and for the general public to hear. So this is from Zell. Dear Christine, Joe, and Anthony, while I am not able to attend your end of session town hall tonight, I want to thank you all for a great job representing us in Hartford with the passage of Public Act 21-175, Section 20, which among other provisions directs the Commissioner of the Department of Transportation to study the feasibility of extending shoreline east to westerly Rhode Island, establish new passenger rail service to Norwich, and establish new train stations in Groton and Stonington. This expansion of passenger rail service will improve our air quality, reduce highway congestion, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and be a significant economic boom to our region and to the state of Connecticut using existing railroad tracks. Congratulations. We stand ready to support this classic infrastructure proposal here in Groton and in eastern Connecticut. We are ready to take the train again and to leave our cars at home as we go to work. Thank you all. Best regards, Zell-Stever, Chairman, Groton Resiliency and Sustainability Task Force. Thank you.
In regards to the train and the feasibility study, it's still a task that we are going to continue to need support from residents, not only in Groton and London, but Stonington, but in other towns between here and Rhode Island. So getting letters of support, knowing that people are out there with the same desire that we have to try and make sure that comes to fruition is very important. So we ask you to just please share that with people, because we don't mind getting the letters so that we can show that this is something that southeastern Connecticut is really serious about.
It's like anything, when you go to a higher level, when we ask the federal government, they want to make sure that there's buy-in from the community. They want to make sure, there's a project in London that we're looking to dredge Owlwife Cove, and the first question the state always says, well, who wants it? Because the last thing the governor or a state legislative body wants to do is approve something only to be screamed at by the neighbors and people in that town. They want to make sure that it's a vetted project. And train service on train tracks that are there already, I don't think we're going to have much of a fight from anybody. If you're talking about taking property and homes, I think you have the fight. This is kind of a no-brainer. If you guys haven't got to see the bill, we all know what it looks like. Read it, and if you have any questions, ask us. If you support it, like Anthony said, please write a letter.
And if you have any questions in the legislative process, Zell is now an expert because he watched the bills go from committee bills, proposed bills to committee bills where they're renumbered, to switching to a different vehicle into a committee bill, to splitting the language. We split the language, half of it in the Department of Transportation bill, the other half of it in the budget, and the final piece in the implementer. So Zell did a great job keeping caught up as we used a variety of vehicles to get that concept through, from just a single proposed bill to pieces in 3 different bills that are joined together. And guys, you'll be getting an email. We're setting up some meetings with DOT to talk about this further. So even though session ends, the job doesn't end. There's more work to do, so we can make sure this task force stays on point.
Questions? Yeah.
Thank you very much. Bruce Jones, RTM representative, District 7 here in Groton. And thank you, reps, for coming in today. I noticed on page 14, looking at the packet, you have a new Office of Dyslexia and Reading Disabilities. And being someone who has suffered from dyslexia for my whole life, I think that's a pretty cool thing to have done. And can you just talk a little bit about what that will mean and how that will be distributed, and will money come down to help kids and teacher training? And I guess the second question to that would be, are there other disabilities that you are looking at for setting up offices in the future?
That is some of the legislation that we're having discussion in regards to now, because we've gotten a lot of requests for autism and other areas on the spectrum in regards to including it in something like this. This was something that was dear to my heart, especially with the problems that I had at a young age. It really brought kind of tears to my eyes because of making sure that teachers verify things a little bit better in regards to dyslexia, because going through school and knowing that you went through school and graduated because of some of the special sports or special arts that some of our kids had when I was in school, and getting out of school and not finding until I got out of school that there was some issues that I had with dyslexia, and having to have training myself after school was something that was very, I guess I can, I want to say that it was embarrassing for me, but for me to have a tutor at an adult age because of some things that were missed in school really crushed me, and I was scared to talk about it. And sometimes, even now, as I explained to Christine before, some problems still arise because of that. That I get challenged on as a politician. How are you a politician and you can't even speak right? How are you a politician and you can't even remember stuff? You know, so having some issues as such, and then seeing something like this be pushed through the legislation on such a grand scale with the support that it got was really a great thing, I think. And we will definitely be looking to talk to others in regards to anything else that people are concerned with, to make sure that we cover whatever spectrum there is in regards to issues with things like this.
Anthony and I both had the same issue as kids, but because it's not surprising, I was born a couple of years younger than Joe and Anthony, because I use the
Why do you
computer.
always bring that up?
Because I use the internet and the computer in school. But a couple years younger, in the town that my parents happened to live in when I was school age, gave me opportunities that Anthony didn't have, and that's really not fair. So that's a main point of the bill. It shouldn't be the town that your parents happen to live in the year that you happened to be born in, that I got some early intervention that Anthony didn't have accessibility to. So as we talk about our team, we all have great schools in the towns we represent, but when we see, these things do cost money, but they cost money because in the end, each child who has the same issue we had, and many others, do need that early intervention. And I still flip letters, and if I write down your phone number, I'm probably going to flip the digits, but I try to focus and use the early intervention I was taught in school to do well. And if I type an email and I have a misspelling, sorry, I try my best. But we all have things that we're good at. We're born with gifts and the challenges that we have to overcome. And I really think that this bill, and a lot of work, I know we complain about former Governor Dan Malloy. He also is dyslexic. He memorized each speech that he gave. He was not very good at reading out loud. And he took opportunity to help students who were having the same issues, to teach them the interventions he's had as an adult, to try to help folks. So while I don't agree with everything that he did, his work with our youth to try to help folks with dyslexia is something we should all encourage. And we do need to do more with autism, and we need to make sure that our kids in Connecticut can all read and write, have the skills they need.
I mean, this is one of those bills where you can't, again, I said you can't quantify things sometimes, but if you really, right now we can, because who knows, Chris became a lawyer because somebody identified a problem because they had training. And that's why I am proud of being in Connecticut, because that happens a lot, and we hear it a lot, that the outcomes are better in Connecticut for a lot of different students if you had X, Y, and Z, and it's because of bills just like this. So again, I won't speak, you guys have dealt with it. If I misspell something, it's because I didn't pay attention enough in school. I don't have dyslexia, I have a rare form of the inability to spell. But at the same time, there's other things that somebody was trained in that would recognize in me, maybe as a young person, that would help me along. And I feel like I've been blessed to live here, actually. So I'm glad that you've had that good outcome, Anthony. I'm glad to see, I know you've had some obstacles. And again, him being a politician and saying just what he said, that people ask about, how's he doesn't always speak exactly like I'd like him to. He's not a politician. That guy loves his state, and he fights for us every single time, any chance he gets. And it doesn't matter what your speech or how it comes out. We know where your heart is, and that's why I love working with you, man.
And one thing that's really important, and that's what, especially when we talk to our schools, is measuring reading proficiency is just one of the most important things, I think, for our kids. Getting out of high school with above an 8th grade reading level is so important. And we really need to push our schools to ensure that our children are above an 8th grade reading level. Because there is a lot of kids that graduate from school that aren't. And people say that's okay. It's not okay. Because when you have problems reading, that connects to your ability to comprehend lots sometimes. And that's one of the things that I struggle with. And we can't let our kids go out of high school with only an 8th grade reading level.
No, Representative Nolan, I addressed a lot of what you're saying. I was diagnosed in 4th grade. I was the kid in high school who made the models instead of doing the English papers. They always feel sorry for you at that time. So you're the one who made Viking villages and windmills and all kinds of stuff. I didn't learn to read until I was 53, or learn to write until I was 53. I now authored multiple books just from drive and push. So I applaud you for what you're doing with it. It's great.
So congratulations on your that's great.
Hi, I just posted on the internet. I have to tell you that I've come to these sessions for the last couple of years, and the three of you collectively, as individuals and as our representatives, are really amazing. So thank you. I moved today because I'm very proud of you for what you did with the domestic violence bill. And I too learned about the bill process because I was a proponent for that. I watched it pass in the House by a majority vote, and I watched it pass in the Senate by a majority vote, and then unfortunately I watched it go to the governor's desk and just sit there. And I felt so compassionate about getting him to sign it. I've never done anything like this in my life. I went to the library and I wrote a letter to 214 people, all of our senators, all the representatives of the House, our controller. I've written the governor and the assistant governor. I think it's amazing because we need family court reform. And every time that comes up, the bills just disappear. And this is the first time, I believe, since 2014 that we've passed a bill that's going to impact family court reform in such a big way because there's so many families that are affected by domestic violence. And although it was called Jennifer Law for Jennifer Dulos, who hasn't been found yet, and Jennifer Mangano, every victim of domestic violence is a Jennifer, so to speak. And the problem is that people don't recognize that it's not just male-specific or female-specific, it's family-specific. And that once that dynamic becomes part of a family, it doesn't go away. And unfortunately in the state of Connecticut, if we have diversionary programs that if somebody gets arrested, that they just have to comply with the diversionary program and their charges get nollied. But that family still has to go forward and interact. And unfortunately, our court system considers those families high conflict. So, and then they get defined as that. So it has lots of different effects. One of the things I have a question about, because I have another question about something separate, is I think it's phenomenal now that this bill's got passed and it has all these protections and safeguards in place. So one of the things I've been trying to get people to answer with all of these bills, they all have so many facets and components. Now that this domestic violence bill has been passed in Connecticut, and part of it's going into effect July 1st and the other part is October 1st, who is responsible for rolling this out to the judiciary and the Connecticut Bar Association to ensure that they know all the facets to help people in current cases and future cases and to protect, most of all, the children who are impacted by this?
So I'm a member of Connecticut Bar Association
I know.
as an attorney. And we attorneys are required to do continuing legal education classes every year. We have to do a minimum of 12 credits that we have to report to the judiciary website when we renew our licenses. So we all do these classes. There's already been, the Bar Association does online, it's been online conventions, but they had one already talking about all of our laws, and it's one of the good things about being a legislator is you usually get invited to do a presentation, so that way you don't have to pay the fee for the convention, which is nice. We don't get paid when we speak, but we get to attend the conventions. So there have been the different sections of the Bar Association not only work with the General Assembly, each section of the Bar Association, so the family law section has a president, the criminal law section has a person who actually negotiates bills with the Judiciary Committee. So they're in there on the ground. The Bar Association has a lobbyist who gets all the bills. And then the judges, we affectionately refer to it as judge school. In July, they have 3 days that they cancel court, and they get updates in the law once we finish our session every year. For the criminal judges, get the criminal, family, all the things. They all get their updates in judge school. And then the lawyers, we pay, or if you get to speak, you get a credit. We are responsible for going to class. And then we as legislators and lawyers and advocates do presentations for free to a variety of groups. So domestic violence groups have presentations, and the head of them have presentations, or they can call us and say, this is a complex law, can you come down and present it online or in person, and we do all that for them. So the world knows, and this is a great law, and you've been an amazing advocate, and I did see your letters and I saw your social media, how frustrating it is waiting for your bill to be signed. We're with you there every step of the way. It takes so many days after a bill passes the House and the Senate for it to be transmitted to the governor, and it's a painful process, and then you have to wait 15 days he can sign it right away. If he does not sign it or she, because we have had female governors and we can do it again, do not sign the bill automatically becomes law. If the bill gets vetoed, we can come in and do a veto override. 2/3 of the House and Senate overrides any veto of the governor. That bill passed by, I'm glad the governor signed it. If he had not, we would have overrode that veto if we had plenty of votes.
So I have to tell you, I'm kind of disappointed in our governor because he signed it quietly in the middle of the night on June 28th. Of all the bill signings and things that he has publicly spoken about, he still hasn't spoken about the domestic violence bill. And I just think that he needs to join the governors of Colorado, Hawaii, Pennsylvania, and California to be proud that Connecticut is now one of the few states in the United States with a domestic violence bill, to challenge himself to bring awareness to domestic violence and to curb it in our state and for the sake of the children and the future of our children. So that was one thing. So I've just been still trying to advocate for him to do that, and it's just a little frustrating. But I have to tell you that this whole process has inspired me separately. But secondly, my other concern is I'm really happy that you passed the Clean Slate bill, and I think that's really important because if somebody, I've looked into that, if somebody hasn't reoffended for 7 years, they can possibly get their charges taken care of. But my concern is I actually know someone that's in Corrigan now. And one of the things that just happened is we're going to be closing 3 prisons. One of them is in Summers. One of them, I just found out, is Rogowski. But right now, Corrigan has 600 inmates that are pre-sentence status. And because of the governor's executive abilities, a lot of their cases have had rolling bulk continuances, which has interfered with their due process. And also, Corrigan right now is facing, they're overusing and misusing lockdown because of short staffing. I've spoken to COs, there's people that are quitting there, they're not hiring, and as an impact of that, our prisoners in Corrigan right now, from Friday to Sunday, were in isolation for 48 hours. They were just in isolation again Monday night. While they're in isolation, they are not allowed recreation, they're not allowed phone calls, and they're not, and if their family has taken the time to do a visitation schedule via virtual or in person, their visits with their families are canceled. And I can understand lockdowns if they're for a reason and for incidents, but I have contacted the DOC and stated that we cannot wait until the next fiscal cycle or until the prisoners are removed from Rogowski to move the staffing. We need to move the staffing now to get their rights back. And that's just one of my concerns that I wanted to bring to your attention. And I have reached out to Kathy Osteen and Ryan. So, but it's impossible to talk to anybody there because apparently a governor previous has removed the ability to have voicemail there, so it's impossible to get in touch with anyone. I've spoken to public defenders who have difficulty getting in touch with counselors too. So we need to improve that process. It's not going to do any good to give prisoners free calls, which by the way are 90 minutes a day for each prisoner, if while they're in lockdown continuously they can't make those calls. And I would like you to potentially look into solving that. So thank you very much.
Can you send us something email in regards to that?
Yes.
That is something that we've talked about pushing an issue with because of the fact that we changed the executive order over.
I just called the DOC the day before yesterday and talked to someone in public relations, and they said, one of the legislators wrote to me and said, thank you for bringing it to my attention. We've talked about it, but in the next fiscal cycle, there will be funds. But if you have COs right now that are working double shifts, and there's people quitting there, and the point, it's so short-staffed right now that if a prisoner goes out on a bus, meaning an ambulance, and somebody has to escort them, they're at such short staffing right now at Corrigan that if there's an incident, it's a safety issue.
Well, that's the excuse we don't want them to continue to use as being a reason for some of these lockdowns because of a safety issue. That's unexcusable. We need to hire people. We need to make sure that there's enough people on staff so that there doesn't have to be lockdowns for that length of time and or solitary confinement for the amount of time that some of these prisoners are given solitary confinement.
Well, I just feel poorly for the 450 to 600 people that have been in there through COVID on a pre-sentencing basis because their due process has been violated due to the bulk continuances as well. I can't imagine having a family member in there that's made a poor choice or decision but is stuck in their cell due to staffing issues. So everything is a trickle-down theory, but no one wants to take accountability and responsibility or be available to fix the issue. So thank you.
We have one from the crowd of, can you talk about grammar curriculum requirements?
I'm sorry,
Can we talk about grammar curriculum requirements?
the grammar school, someone want to nod their head yes or no? May I hear the question?
Can we talk about grammar curriculum requirements?
Grammar, English.
Yeah.
And are you talking about the literacy?
Someone wrote the question, who doesn't want to, so we're just gonna make,
Okay,
we're gonna say what our assumption is when we're not fully understanding the question, and then answer the question.
In my view, any requirement that we would have towards anything to do with education would be vetted through our superintendents of schools, the departments of education. So I'm not exactly sure, I don't think we completely understand the question. But all curriculum is developed through all of our professionals from the top down, so I really don't quite understand the question if
I
they're,
think they're referring
Is there
to
a
our
bill?
reading curriculum bill that's on page 14.
oh, okay, that's
So I'll
fine.
talk about that, that's the assumption I'm making,
Yep.
and that's what we'll talk about.
Question along that same line, if I could.
Okay.
Okay,
And
so
What page you
I
got?
guess
14.
for Groton, Joe, but on and the whole state, but the critical race theory it's so controversial now. And the majority of states already have a law against it. That's how controversial it is. And it seems like it's being jammed down our throat, and we don't have any say in it at all. And we go to the Board of Ed meetings, and they won't talk to us. It's a one-way conversation, you might know. And we can talk, but they won't answer. And that's what we're running into. And this critical race, the more you look at it, it's like they're trying to change history. And I think it should at least get a referendum or a public vote or more information or something, but we can't even see the curriculum for these younger kids. It's very hard to find, and they won't tell us. And that's what I'm wondering, what you know about this critical race theory. Is Connecticut going ahead with it, even though I think it's 26 states already have a law against it?
There will not be a law against it in the state of Connecticut.
So that
I took critical race theory
so that
in law
we
school
will be
at a
teaching
doctorate level of education in the state of Massachusetts. I learned about critical race theory in the doctorate level.
Would you
And-
please give us your definition?
I took a class.
What would you say, what is your definition of critical race theory?
So critical race theory has been around in the doctorate level of education since the 70s. It has, so many people before me have learned about critical race, has learned about history as it actually happened. I think what I learned as a young student in grammar school in Connecticut was not always true. What I was told about slavery was not always accurate. The school I went to, which was not a town in Groton or in London that I represent, I was told a very happy story of slavery in elementary school years, which was not factually correct. I think that what we do with our model codes in the state of Connecticut is that we have actual factual information as to what happens. That, we had the massacre, and Mystic Massacre should be taught because it was a factual event that happened. And I think that's what our children need to learn. There are some things that is not accurate to tell a kindergartner, to learn the actual facts as to how people were massacred, but to know age appropriately that there were very violent issues in the United States and across the world. And sometimes when we look back at our history, it's not the peachy history that I was taught in the 80s in all areas.
And
I think we need to teach the facts.
And I understand that. Who determines that those facts that we've been taught for the last 200 years are wrong? Who determines that?
Some of the facts I was taught were wrong, and I can say that in the state of
Yeah,
Connecticut.
but who determined that? Who has the right to say now that that was wrong? I mean, we know that there was
But
a
there's-
very, very little bit that Columbus ever wrote back. I think the one tiny journal, but now he's being
But we have the facts,
portrayed as
we have the facts and history in regards to a lot of the things that we weren't taught in school.
So is this gonna be a whole curriculum in grammar school and up?
In my opinion, it should be.
Um,
And I
yeah, wait,
say
you
that
still-
because changing history to truth is the right thing to do.
Yeah, but that's your truth. It's not everybody's truth.
Okay,
But what is it?
there's things that I learned in school that were totally false.
Yeah, but how do you know that?
Because history's proven.
Yeah, but they've been teaching the other history for the 250 years.
It's the wrong history, though.
We don't know. We can't get any.
We do, there are facts in regards to this history.
Yes, there are facts,
There are
and
facts.
I am an elementary school teacher with a specialty in American history, and I totally agree that there are facts that must be taught, and it's a shame that your teachers weren't good enough to teach you the facts.
Correct.
But that's not critical race theory. That's teaching history the way it should be taught, which is a totally different story.
So we have
Critical race
curriculum.
theory, the way, that's why we're asking you how you define it.
So we have
Our
model
curriculums are
We have
looking,
model curriculums in the state of Connecticut that the state produces for each subject matter. That will continue to stay, and those are truthful, factual models. Each school is given those model curriculums. the schools may adjust them as they feel is
Yes,
appropriate
I know
for
all
their
about
town.
that. Yep.
And that process that we do in the state, I think should very well continue. Well,
Right.
one more, yeah.
Just one more, on this immigration thing, are we expecting busloads of immigrations in our three-town area?
No.
No, okay. That's all, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else?
If you'd like to stay after and have
Thank you.
conversations.